Thanks for joining us. Good morning. I think I can make out everybody here. Welcome to the panel discussion today, which is focused on how we integrate AI and HI to drive real value and help procurement become the biggest value creator in the organization. Now, this is a timely topic. I mean, we've spent the last couple of days really learning about these technologies and getting reacquainted with what's going on. And as we've talked about, the opportunity is tremendous. There's a lot that these technologies offer us. But there's kind of two things that you hear pretty regularly, and that is, if you speak to practitioners, the first thing is clear. The opportunity is incredible. It's, I hate to use this word nowadays, but it's unprecedented, right? It's going to transform the way we work. But at the same time, the other question that I hear from CPOs all the time is, how do we make sense of this? How do we translate all of this data into real action and get results? Because if we're not getting results at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. So that's really the core question that we're going to be talking about today. And from our perspective, the answer lies not only in technology, and I'll use the term AI very broadly to include technology from that standpoint. It's not just in technology alone. It's not in people or human intelligence alone. It's in the combination of the two. That's what drives that value, right? So as we've heard about and talked about, AI and technology is valuable in that it allows us to monitor vast amounts of data, interpret vast amounts of data, even do some analysis on that data. But humans are still needed to customize it, to contextualize it, and to drive real value. And that's part of the conversation today that we want to focus on is, what are some of those implications, not so much from a tech perspective. We're not going to talk about the benefits of technology because I think we all know that, we understand that. We're going to talk about the implications for our people, for human intelligence specifically. And joining me in this conversation is our esteemed panel, who I'd like I'll let them introduce themselves. I'm not going to do the introductions. But let's kind of go one by one and introduce them. Jurriaan, please.
Okay, it's great to be here today, and what a vibe, yeah, sort of face-to-face DPW.
Yeah.
I think that's great, and thank you for flying into Amsterdam as well. We appreciate your courtesy. My name is Jurriaan Lombaers. I'm the Chief Procurement Officer for Air France KLM, and before that worked at PepsiCo Unilever in various finance, supply chain, and operations roles. So, yeah, great to be here.
Paula.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining the conversation this morning. I'm Paula Martinez. I've been a procurement leader for many, many years. I've been a former CPO of Adidas and Novartis, and I'm very looking forward to my conversation with my colleagues today. Welcome.
Ralf.
Thank you, and good morning from my side as well. Ralf Peters, my name. I'm based in Berlin. I head up the procurement function for Coca-Cola Europacific partners. I've been in the Coke system my entire life. Will probably never leave. But I have a finance background and moved to procurement 6 years ago.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, and it's great to have you all on the panel today. You'll notice the comment from Jurriaan, which is he's glad we all flew in here, since he's CPO of KLM and Air France. That's appropriate. Hopefully we all flew Air France and KLM to get from wherever we are. All right, so our discussion today is going to focus on three core questions, which we're going to talk through. At the end of it, we'd love to take questions. I have a feeling we're not going to be able to get to questions, but please do ask if you do have any. But the three core elements of the conversation we're going to talk about is, what are the challenges of technology and AI today in terms of our people? And that's the first question. The second question that we're then going to get into is, if those are the challenges, what are the implications for human intelligence, for our teams and our people? And then we'll close it out with question number 3, which is, how do we prepare for this high-value future in procurement, as Eloise just talked about, anchoring within the digital but driving real transformation. How do we prepare for that? What are some of the to-dos? What are the things that we need to be aware of? So that's the 3-part conversation that we'll get through over the next 20 minutes or so. So question number 1, let's kick off. As I've said, it's well understood AI technology, broadly defined, is here to stay. There's tremendous value. But the one aspect that doesn't get talked about a lot or enough is what those challenges are for our people. So, Jurriaan, if I can ask you, what do you see as some of the specific challenges that AI, and I'll use that term broadly, right, AI technology, et cetera, what does that present for our people specifically? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and some of my answers today will be focused around the letter S, okay? And I think one of the big challenges for me is really the S curve of innovation. I think, and we're seeing that here today, there's a lot of technology, data becoming available. And the question is, how do you really ramp up? And I think the technology moves a lot faster than the people.
Yeah.
So it's really, the challenge is, how do you work your way through that overwhelming amount of data? I mean, we're working a lot together with Delta Airlines as an example. They recently set up a risk management tool, and they're getting so much information that they really need to rethink, how are we going to organize for that? How are we going to deal with that?
Yeah.
So anything, I mean, the key, how do you work through that is probably one of the key challenges.
Yeah, yeah. Paula, does that resonate in terms of, I mean, you spend a lot of time in life sciences in particular, among other things, but as you think about that, does that resonate in terms of volume of data? Are there other aspects that you think about?
Yeah, I think there's, one of the challenges is the understanding, right? There's a lot of buzzwords out there, whether it's data, whether it's algorithm, what is AI, and what is AI? Is artificial intelligence? Is it a robot that is going to replace my job, which leads into the second challenge, which is the fear factor, right? Around, how my job and my reality and my way of working is gonna be impacted. So first is understanding, and I think to do that, people need to develop really a digital mindset, and then is how do we overcome the fear, and how do we equip our teams and our organizations to really teach them on the how you start working with all these new technologies, that is going to help you change your way of working, and how do you need to do things differently, and how do you separate the wheat from the chaff, right? What is useful for you and your job and the role that you're currently having in the organization, and how this is going to enable, and what is not useful. And then, try to focus on what you can really do differently with, what is coming your way.
Yeah, I like that. There's a couple of points that you made in there I think are particularly relevant, right? The point around fear, which I don't think we think enough about. We're quite enamored by the technology and everything that it can do. The other aspect is separating the wheat from the chaff, and that I think applies at multiple levels in terms of what that plays out. Ralf, does that resonate with you in terms of your experiences?
In terms of the challenges, I would say, make your organization, your procurement team, and I think that's what we are talking about in the first place, owning the topic, and it always starts at the top. So it is, there was no question I will be here not only for the session, but all 3 days, and float around and get a feel of what is new, what is different, what are the startups, what are the experienced suppliers have to offer, how has it evolved? Because I need to be a champion in order to have at least a chance to make my team a champion for the digital journey. Yeah. I will never have a chance to get my team along if I'm not here, if I haven't seen that. And consistently, so this event, the last year's event, any other virtual event, that offers a good comprehensive glimpse. Once you have that established and you own it as a CPO, I think everything else will fall in place, because then you probably naturally make the right decision in terms of how much resources do I need to allocate to that? Do I need to actually have a dedicated resource that is not a category manager, that's not a master data subject matter expert, but a digital champion? One of the guys out there that comes to you and challenges you constantly, and then starts to help you to select, to funnel, and to certainly decide what is the right thing to do, which allows you then to build a strategy. So that challenge, it always starts with me as a CPO. And I think Eloise said it yesterday. She applauded in the opening comment the CPOs that are in the room. She applauded half-heartedly the CPOs that were dialed in, because they missed the emotional piece and they missed the interaction.
Yeah.
But she said the others, they fail. And I think to a certain extent it's true. Well,
yeah, I think that idea of digital champion makes 100% sense. And you don't delegate a responsibility as important as this it's important to bring your people. I don't think there's any question around that, but the leadership has to show that they're aligned with it. And I think
which I think is the same with some of the other strategic challenges.
Yeah.
So once you know what are the strategic challenges in your business, you need to own them from the top, really own them.
Yeah.
And that is one of the very few that you have to own.
And that's fair. I think that's a good challenge to present, which is no matter how much we see potential in the technology, in the idea, it doesn't have to be technology actually, but whatever change you're trying to drive, if it's not, I was going to say illustrated, but if it's not practiced at the leadership level, it's not going to resonate with the rest of the organization.
Sure.
So as we sort of think about that then, what does this mean for all of our teams, right? So how can they begin to take advantage of this data-driven world? And I appreciate there's a lot of elements to that conversation, right? So we can talk about roles, we can talk about skill sets, we can talk about how you organize or structure the organization. But just if I leave that broadly, and maybe Ralf, let's start with you. As you think about that, what that means for your people and your teams, how do you think about that? What do you do?
Create an environment which allows every category manager, every member of the procurement team to move from I need to use that to I want to use it. I see the benefit in that. So how do you do that? In a safe environment where you create a consistency, you have CAD managers to talk about what they learned about, what they saw in their category in that system. And we have 4 or 5 systems that are AI-driven, that have a lot of data that potentially lead to insights. Every insight matters. Every insight that is created by a CAD manager matters. Doesn't matter the value, because it leads to, actually there's a sense in for me, there's a value in for me, and then I can translate that over time into heavy usage, which means I trust the tool in terms of it helps me to fulfill my overarching task, either in terms of creating value or improving supplier relationship, et cetera, et cetera. But you need to create a safe environment for your people to be exposed to learn, to show what they have seen, and then collect the feedback. And that's important for the existing team, but even more important when you onboard people. So over time, your team is changing and you onboard people. I mean, you implement something and then you leave it alone, it will die out because every newcomer in the company hasn't had a chance to go to the same process and the same environment like when you launch a product. So there's a lot in that we have to make sure it works in order for our team to pick it up. I didn't need to think about the insights, I just need to think about how I enable my people to pick that up. And it starts with a safe environment. Yeah.
And Jurriaan, I'm going to ask you about this in a second, but when you say safe environment, I like that idea. And I know it's not quite the same concept, but I know J&J's here yesterday and today talking about this idea of the digital garage, right? Which is sort of a little microcosm, if you will, to experiment and try things. But tell me what you mean when you say safe environment.
I ask for insights, not in the moment when I desperately need it. So I would not ask, so where's your contingency when a supplier falls over? But I would ask, show me what you saw and what is the potential contingency, because it's like every Monday, it's a routine that we look at 2 or 3 things. In a safe environment means I don't need to present something as an answer to a problem, but I need to present something as a potential learning outcome that helps me to answer a future problem. And that's the difference, because that's a safe environment. You're not panicking, you're not under stress. You have time to play with the tools, and then you present something, you get feedback, you get better. And when a situation happens, you're much easier, much more relaxed to handle that.
Yeah. Well, let's not try and solve problems when we're trying to save the world.
You know how it is normally. The boss only picks up the phone when there's an issue, and asks, what do you do with that? Our task is to avoid that by turning it around and put a routine behind that.
100%. Jurriaan, does that resonate with you? And how else do you think about this practical implications for the teams and people?
I mean, from my side, another 2 S's here that matter to me. I mean, one is about skills, and the other one is about sort of building new services. So, and I think that builds on what Ralf was also saying. I think you have to change your organization, you have to change your skills. So, I think every category manager, every category director, every buyer, by default, needs to be data-driven as much as the person also needs to be really have sustainability at heart. That's another really sort of key change happening now. And it takes time. I mean, you have people that sort of love this stuff, they champion it, so you need to nurture them. There's probably the vast majority that will follow. You have a couple of people that stay behind. And I think part of the safe environment is to focus very much on the champions.
Yeah.
And the vast majority that's going to lead.
Yeah.
And have trust that sort of the other people will follow step by step. And I think the other thing, new procurement organizations also need to have new services. I mean, having data scientists, business analysts, people that truly understand sort of digital procurement, like a digital champion, are, I think, fundamental, and I would recommend to build that into any organization.
Yeah.
And we're doing that as we speak in Air France KLM.
So we have new roles, but we also have this transformation of our existing people to be more foundationally data-driven in their thinking, more analytically oriented, if I could use that term, than before. Paula, maybe talk a little bit about that aspect of it, and other aspects as well, but how that happens. How do you deliver that?
I think, creating what Ralf and Jurriaan were referring about, that psychological safe environment, for the people, it's very important. But then there's also other elements. There's the curiosity element. Yesterday, Eloise also made her reference in her presentation around, spend data. Well, if we still have people in the mindset that you are building a capability around data science, in the organization, but the rest of the organization are used to, I need this report. Can you please provide it to me? Yeah. That's not gonna, you're not gonna extract the value of building, a data science and going into analytics, right? So. How you go from descriptive and reporting mindset that people use reports into how do we create insights is a huge challenge. And to do that, we need to teach, again, the psychological safe environment is very important, but people need to learn that, what is the question that I need to ask my data? What is the business insight that I want to achieve? And the business insight is not something that comes only from the procurement organization. It's also by engaging with your stakeholders. What are the pain points? What are the problems? What do they want to solve for? And then that will help you as a category manager, as a category lead, as a buyer, doesn't matter where you are in the organization, to come with, that's the level of insight that that person is looking for. And then how can I build a use case for that? It's not about the data. We're all sitting on a pile of data. Your data engineers, will clean that data for you. They will make it workable for you. But it's, the key capability, it's coming up with the question on what use case do I want to drive with that data that is gonna come with this amazing insight on how I'm going to unlock value and opportunity for the organization. And that's the biggest struggle, for the procurement organization. When we built our data science and analytics, predictive analytic capabilities, the procurement organization continued using that new capability, that new muscle that we were building as a reporting organization. I want on my email this exact report. So this is the learning curve, that everybody needs to go through. And also doing a lot of experimentation, around that on what is working and what is not working.
So that is I think that's a really interesting point because, I think it presents it's such a foundational point that you just raised, which is we understand the potential of what technology can unleash, but it's a little bit of a scary thing because it almost exposes how people need to change in their thinking. So to your point, it's not about, I've got this great new widget, how do I use it to do what I used to do better? But what it says is that people need to change at a more foundational level and be more strategic, a little bit, less tactical. They need to think in terms of internal customer or stakeholder issues and how do I translate that?
Yeah, and our opportunities, right? Where is my opportunity in this area of spend? And
right.
Then, having the data to then develop the insight, to then be able to quantify and to drive that opportunity forward.
So to me, and it would be great to hear, and anyone can pick this up, as you sort of think about that, how do you think about, I'm going to use a very, consulting term, right? But I mean, how do you sort of inventory your people and look at those skill sets to say, I've got this group of X hundred people, how many are ready to be able to do something like this? How do you sort of grapple with that issue? Jurriaan, you want to take that?
I mean, from my side, I think it's all about sort of learning by doing.
Yeah.
And I think it's sort of mobilizing projects, sort of doing the real work and get on with it and sort of allow for failures, but at the same time, many of the projects that you do deliver significant value because they are much more data-driven, because they are more strategic. I think it's important then to provide recognition to those teams. And I think that's the best way, because then, step by step, people will follow. But I think it takes time.
It's a little bit of a trial by fire, right? You find out who is going to make it and who may not be ready for that change fully yet.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say fire as in, because that's a threat again.
Yeah, that's fair.
Have a little bit more patience and help them along the way, I would say.
Trial by fire with a little bit of patience, though. That's important. Ralf, does that make sense?
Of course it does, yeah. I was thinking back, it helps to take any hesitation off the teams when you use some kind of very simple examples sometimes. Just bring up one from 15 years ago, or 10, 15 years ago. I was part of a team that was responsible to implement handhelds to drivers. Yeah? So the whole bias is, now you put technology into the hands of guys who carry pallets of beverages from A to B, and it's like forklift and truck, and how do you want to make sure that they handle the handheld? And it's very simple, because you just sit down with the guys and say, show me your mobile phone. Are you able to use that in your private life? Yes, of course. So here's another mobile phone. Just taking the whole bias out by simple ideas. So find a teacher who is able to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what we decided to do when we came up with we want to go on that digital journey 5-6 years ago. In-house teacher that takes care of any kind of bias, any kind of skill set here, but ideally it should be here. How do we get there in a pragmatic way, whilst at the same time, obviously, doing the right things in terms of technology development, choosing the right tools, choosing the right roadmap. But the job doesn't stop by, I understand the technology. The job stops by, I've been able to bring my team on board using it. Yeah, owning it. Sorry, owning it, not using it, owning it.
Owning it.
And that's the whole job. And often, it stops by, and Eloise said it as well, by selecting a new gadget that we're going to implement, a new upgrade of the software. No, I want the team to own it. And therefore, you may not go with 20 or 10, but only with 2 or 3, because it's easier to own them.
I like the idea of, make it a similar or an example of something you do in your daily life, as opposed to something to be afraid of and to fear. So great point. I'm looking at the timer. We've got about 6.5 minutes, so I want to get to our third question, because I want to leave everybody with some ideas and thoughts in terms of how they can prepare for this high-value future. So, Paula, maybe if I kick off with you, how do we do that? How should practitioners think about evolving their organizations, and if there's a takeaway you want them to understand, what would it be?
So I don't think, the good news is I don't think anybody, any procurement professional needs to learn coding. To be able to thrive in a digital world. So that's the good news. Because there's people that are great at that, and they will do it, as part of their core job. However, everybody needs to develop a digital mindset, everybody in the organization. And what that means is everybody needs to understand data. And understanding data means you need to be the owner of your data. Data is an asset that you have as a procurement professional. Are you owning your data? How are you working with the data analytics team, with your data engineers, owning that data to clean that data, to make it work for you, linked to the questions and the value, a question is a value case potentially that you want to run with that data. So own your data. Data is an asset. That's the fuel that you have to thrive in your job. And that's what the digital mindset is, understanding the basics on data and how you own it and how you make it work for you with the resources that you will have available for you to help you achieve that. It's about how also when you're running your analysis, how is that analysis being done? What is the data subset that has been used? What period is that taken into account? Because is there then any bias in that analysis that is going to drive an insight that you need to be aware of? So all those things is having, a digital, it's enabling you to have a digital mindset, which will enable you to change your attitudes and behaviors. You don't need to learn the hard skills. You just need to be open to thrive, because the key takeaway that I want to leave you with is every industry, every function, every role is impacted by digital. And if you do not develop this digital mindset, if you don't have the basic understanding around data, around what is an algorithm, around, what is, I don't like to call it AI, like artificial intelligence, but, on those new solutions, what is the augmented intelligence that is embedded there and how that is going to enable you to do a better job, how it's going to help you transform the way you do your work, then you are not going to be able to thrive. So have that curiosity, learn the basics. You don't need to be experts, you just need to have a basic understanding and have this openness, to go into it, because everything is now being impacted by digital, every single role in every organization.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And don't get caught up by the tech. Think about the implications and the use cases and how you apply that. Ralf, your thoughts?
I had a discussion this morning with my category manager, who's here with me, one of the next 100 DPW digital champions. And I was saying, actually, I delegate the question to her, but I will not do. Because it's actually, the point is, what is the user saying? Yeah? What is team member saying? From a CPO perspective, I said it before, you need to be here or in similar events. You need to feel, you need to, for yourself, prioritize. You own it. If I don't own it, it will not happen.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Yeah.
And then once I own it, I need to make the right decisions. And one of the decisions is bring in someone who has the capability, who acts as a teacher, as a coach for the entire team, and as a key person to connect with all the other stakeholders left and right in the organization that have a digital agenda as well. And that is a great setup on which you then can thrive and you build your strategy and implement and adjust to the ever-changing external requirements that are out there.
Yeah, it feels like a cliche, but it's so true. It starts at the top and it has to filter all the way down to the organization. So that's a great point. Jurriaan, if you can close us out.
Yeah, I have another two S's remaining. So one we already talked a lot about, which is senior leadership. I think you got to own this yourself. You got to be in the tools yourself. Your team has to see that. I think that role model is incredibly important, and I think we already talked a lot about it, so let me not dwell on it. But I think that sets the tone, and then everybody else in procurement, as Paula said, I mean, it's here to stay. I mean, it should be embedded in each and every role. Anybody wants to be a senior leader, embrace it and lead it. And then the last point, I mean, maybe to bring it a little back down to earth, I mean, for me, it's really about step by step. Yeah. If you come back from DPW, you're so enthusiastic with lots of ideas. You hit reality again with inflation and step in sustainability procurement. There's a lot of difference, I think, in between success and failure, properly scaling this and doing this step by step. I'd rather have sort of 1 or 2 apps per year that we launch and really get adopted than get the tick in the box, say we implemented 10, but none of them are adopted. And I think that takes years, that's not sort of weeks or months. It's got a lot of perseverance and patience. But that step by step, I think, is another probably condition of success, I would say.
Yeah, I think that point of patience is a good one, right? I mean, we get excited, we want to do a lot of things, we come out of these events and we want to implement the next X number of technologies, but let's have a roadmap, let's have some patience, let's have some champions, quick wins, leadership commitment, let's drive that throughout the organization. And the other sort of underlying point that I think everybody's talked about, let's bring our people along on the process. not so much a trial by fire, but some level of patience to bring them along and make sure we're successful. Well, I'd like to thank all three of you for the conversation. I think it's been great. Apologies, I knew this was going to happen. We wouldn't have time for questions. But I think we'll all be around afterwards, so if anybody has questions, please do come and ask the panel. And thanks very much for coming to the session today. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.